Today I'm going to be answering your questions about becoming a freelance video editor. Going to be talking about pay and hours and how you meet people, how you get the jobs, what you do when you get there, what you got to learn, all that good stuff. And this is the second time I tried to record this video. The first time me and my girlfriend did it and we just ended up getting champagne drunk. So here we go. Casper Bingston, I can't find any work. How do I find people willing to pay? Well, that's a very big question. It really depends on where you are in your editing journey. Do you have like a simple reel? Do you have a portfolio of work that you've done, or are you just starting out? If you have some stuff under your belt, then it is gonna come down to networking and getting yourself in front of the right people. I actually just did a 45-minute long talk on my Patreon about how I learned and taught myself how to network, because I always hated it and I thought it was so sleazy, but it doesn't have to be that way. Networking is really just forging relationships and friendships with people that are where you want to be. Depending on where you are, you can try locally. There's always going to be wedding videographers and real estate videographers and companies that are going to need videos edited. So you can focus on what's nearest and easiest to get around where you are, or you can look to the internet. You can look at smaller YouTubers, not me, but other people. You can even offer your work for free at first, just to show them that you can do it, and then charge them after that. Or you can try looking for jobs on LinkedIn, on Indeed, on Mandy.com, on Craigslist. There's Facebook groups. I need an editor. I need an assistant editor. That's where I got my first assistant editing gig. So the world is your oyster, but look, the first client or two is obviously going to be the hardest, but once you get them and you over-deliver on the work for them and they recommend you to their connections, you know, it all just snowballs. I'm a DaVinci editor, but I get that there's an established industry standard with using Premiere and Avid. Is there any chance for editors like me, or do I have to bite the bullet of switching? If you want to keep working in DaVinci or Final Cut or Vegas or whatever you're working with, you can, but it's only going to be viable for remote jobs where the client is not going to want the working files, the project files back from you. So if you're doing anything that's collaborative with other editors, or you're going to be trading project files, it's not going to work unless you're one of the very, very rare jobs that I've never heard of that work with DaVinci exclusively. I've seen some Final Cut Pro jobs, not many at all, but they're out there, I guess. But it's mostly Premiere and Avid. It's only going to take you a few weeks to transfer all your skills from one of those other programs to Premiere, though. They all work basically the same way, so you're just going to have to relearn the shortcuts, relearn the quirks. That's it. What's the exact color of your accent wall? Blue. Ananda, you told that you can get paid about $500 to $750 a day. So if the project takes more time than expected, then doesn't this make it more profitable for you? Oh, Ananda, you naughty devil. No, I would never go longer than needed just to milk out like an extra day rate out of a client. I actually try to finish before the deadline just to win that client's loyalty and get repeat customers, you know, because again, most of the gigs that I do are multi-day gigs. Sometimes they're going for weeks. So for me, trying to eke out like an extra day to basically scam my client wouldn't make any sense anyways, because I want them to have a good memory of working with me and bring me back next month for a job that's 3 weeks long. And also pretty much every job I do is based on deadlines. So there's like a rolling series of deadlines and deliverables that I have to meet on those days. For example, on Monday, it'll be like we get the rushes, the footage. Thursday, they want a first cut. On Friday, they send it to client. On Monday, we get notes back. And if things are taking longer than normal, then I'm communicating that with my client. In general, I'm always finishing quicker than I even tell them I'm going to. It's all about over-promising and under-delivering. If you think it's going to take a day, tell them it's going to take a day and a half. If you're late, you'll still look good. David Clark, I lucked into a freelancing job for a company, several huge YouTube channels, but I got nowhere to go from there. They're all in another state, so not sure how much networking I can do here. Any tips? Look, if all of your connections are in another state, then you should probably try to make connections in your own state. Again, there's local demand for editing no matter where you are, more or less. So it might be not the highest paying, it might not be the most glamorous work, but you should still be able to build up some kind of editing portfolio with local context. And I think that's the easiest way to acquire your first work and build up that initial portfolio. Kyle and Koda, could you go into more detail about overcoming the Mac PC dilemma? Did you have to learn Mac? Not necessarily. We live in a post-COVID world now, so most work editing is remote. Premiere, Avid, DaVinci, they're all cross-platform. So if you're on PC, you can probably keep working on PC and nobody will ever know or care. The only issue you might run into is that some hard drives are Mac formatted, not PC formatted, but there's software that you can get that will allow you to read Mac formatted hard drives and vice versa. So you're fine there. The only time you're gonna need to know Mac is if you go on site to edit, because pretty much every client is working off of Mac. Daniel, hey, would you happen to know what courses or videos on Lynda you took to get the basics of Premiere and all the shortcuts? Yes, I do not actually, I have no idea. So it's LinkedIn Learning now though. Go check it out and look for a course that is thorough, long, and has the working files that you can download and edit along with the teacher. Because if they're just talking at you and showing you things, you know, it's gonna go in one ear and out the other. If you're clicking along and following along and doing the physical editing that they're doing, you're gonna retain that information much better. So that's what I would look for if I was you, Daniel. Bog, what's the best place to find someone to edit for online though? Again, you can do some direct outreach to YouTubers or something, but look, there's also Upwork.com, which is like a freelancing website. Fiverr too, but I feel like Fiverr is kind of a race to the bottom in terms of how cheap you're willing to work. I think you can make more money on Upwork, probably better paying clients there. That said, I know that for Upwork and Fiverr, it's very difficult to get like your first job or two. And what a lot of people do, I think, is just kind of scam the system and get a friend or something to hire them for their first job and leave them a good review. And then it's a little easier to get real work after that. Not that I condone that kind of thing. Charlene K, I love editing, but it scares me because I'm a female and filmmaking is run by mostly men. That's true, editing is mostly dominated by men, but I've definitely gone to a lot of jobs where there have been awesome female editors there. And even at the top of the game, you look at Scorsese and Tarantino's editors were both women. Project Liger, Them Fingers, Mad Spaced Out. Great video though. Stop making fun of me. Evie Wide, curious to know how many hours your day was and why you went with a day rate and not an hourly rate. So I didn't go with an hourly rate just because most of the projects I'm doing are multi-day projects and it just wouldn't make much sense for me to charge by the hour. If I were to take an hourly rate and only work for 6 hours, well, that prevented me from doing another job maybe on this day. So I should get paid for the entire day. That's the logic of a day rate. That said, if there's a client that has something for me, just some tweaks on an old video maybe, and it's gonna take me 2-3 hours, that could potentially be a whole nother day rate. Or if it's a client that I have a good relationship with and I'm feeling a little generous, then a half day rate for that kind of work. So it's just a little more advantageous to the freelancer to charge on a day rate as opposed to an hourly rate. But one thing's for certain, never work for a flat rate if you can help it. That's how you end up getting screwed as a freelancer, because projects will just keep going, notes will keep going, and each extra day that you work, your hourly or daily rate gets lower and lower and lower. So day rate, yes. Hourly rate, maybe if it's a really small thing. Flat rate. No! And how many hours my day was? Well, when I first got started, it was 10 hours. I was doing corporate videos and that was just kind of the standard and what was expected. Once I took a full-time position at an agency, it was 8-hour days. We would have like an hour-long lunch. So really 9 hours, but 8 hours of working. And now that I'm back to freelance again, 8-hour days. I don't see any need to work 10 hours a day. I can get just as much done in a productive 8-hour day as I could in a burned out 10-hour day. And also look, if you're on set, I get why you would want to work for 10 or 12 or 16 hours, whatever you need to do to get the shots in the can, because money is just flying out the window when you're on set. You gotta get it while you're there. But once the footage comes to me, the editor, this is like an office environment. I don't see why I should be expected to work hours longer than like an accountant or anybody else that works in an office. If you're expecting me to work 10 or 12 hours to meet your deadlines, then you, the producer, are not doing a great job of managing the schedule for this project. So no, I work 8-hour days. And honestly, at this point, clients never ask me how many hours I'm working in a day because they don't care about how many hours I'm working. They're caring about, am I going to get this done for them? Are they going to need to hold my hand through the process? Am I going to cause any headaches for them? Is the video going to be incredible? Are they going to look good to their boss? So the number of hours I work in a day really just doesn't matter at all. The numbers have me all confused. A month-long project that pays $400 a day, where I'm from, $400 is a monthly salary for a well-paying position. So that's the thing. I'm assuming that you do not live in America, where things are much more expensive, especially Los Angeles and New York. That's where you're going to find the highest paying clients, highest profile jobs, and the most expensive editors for the most part. But that doesn't mean that if you're working a job for $400 a day or $750 a day, that you're rich and you're rolling in it. That's because the cost of living in Los Angeles and New York is incredibly high. Rent for a studio apartment out here, you might be paying $2,000 a month. Everything is more expensive here. It's all relative. That said, even with the inflated cost of living here, the best paying jobs proportionally are still going to be here. Juice Reviews. How did you get in contact with people so easily? Just Facebook? Well, I like that you assume that it was easy, Juice Reviews. By the way, how did you get a job reviewing juice? That sounds easy. Facebook actually was one way. There's a place called Blue Collar Post Collective. It's a Facebook group full of professional editors, and they have meetups sometimes. So I'd go to those meetups, meet a bunch of editors at the same time, have these like quick conversations. And it wasn't great for actually landing work, but it taught me a lot about how editors talk, what kinds of things that I should know if I have like an interview, skills I need to brush up on, how to present myself as an editor. It really just prepared me for the opportunities that were going to come a little bit later by going to these things and meeting these people. But other than that, I talk about it more in the Patreon video about networking, but I would just cold message people on LinkedIn that were either 3 to 5 years ahead of me, or sometimes like 15 years ahead of me, like really professional trailer editors. It's a difficult thing to do cold outreach like that, and your percentage of that interaction going anywhere is very low, so it takes a lot of work and a good strategy. What's the best juice, by the way? Vizio Inspiron, cool name. How does this work when you're not based in the US? Specifics will vary from place to place. What rates are normal, what hours and working conditions are normal, what type of work is most prevalent in your area. But I think that the general principles that I outlined of my plan and how I executed it will apply anywhere. And real quick, I want to say this past 10 days or so has been absolutely crazy. I was just talking to my girlfriend about being really discouraged about YouTube because I put so much time and effort into these videos and it felt like not many people were watching them or getting much out of it. And just in the past 10 days, I think there's been like 13,000 subscribers. So absolutely crazy. And I just want to thank you guys. I think it's hilarious that a video I made a year ago about how I first became a freelance video editor is the video that's making this potential second career start taking off, which is making videos for you guys to teach everything that I've learned from my 20 years of filmmaking. So very excited. I want to make this the best channel for filmmakers who want to improve their storytelling, no matter what your budget. So doing that here, doing that with weekly videos on the Patreon, and can't wait to keep going. So thanks guys. See y'all next week.